The Fokker 100 has a retractable tricycle landing gear. This module will describe the operation of the landing gear during retraction and extension. We will describe the operation of the main landing gear and the nose landing gear. We will describe the associated controls and indicators on the flight deck. The aircraft has an alternate landing gear system for use in case of main system failure. The operation of the alternate landing gear system will be discussed. Finally, in the malfunction section, we will examine the configuration warnings associated with the landing gear and the procedures to deal with them. The landing gear consists of two main gears and a steerable nose gear. Hydraulic power from the number 1 system is used for the landing gear system and nose wheel steering. The main landing gear retracts inwards, and the nose gear retracts forwards. The main gear doors are sequenced to open and then close during extension and retraction. However, the nose gear doors remain open when the gear is extended. We will now look more closely at the operation of the landing gear, beginning with the main gear. Each main gear has a shock strut which is attached to the wing structure by a main gear bracket. This attachment is the turning point for gear retraction. The shock strut consists of a main member and a sliding member. Torque links are fitted between the main and sliding members to prevent any rotation of the sliding member. Twin main wheels are fitted on a single axle. Attached to the main member is a side stay which gives the main gear strength and rigidity when subjected to side load. A downlock actuator is incorporated in the side stay. When the main gear is down, an over-center mechanism forms a geometric lock. To ensure positive locking, the spring-loaded downlock actuator prevents any movement of the links. No uplock is fitted to the main landing gear. The gear is held in the up position by hydraulic pressure. When the main gear has fully retracted, the sequence valve will allow the door to close. The main gear doors are fitted with an uplock mechanism. If hydraulic pressure is lost in flight, the main gear will rest on the main gear doors. Note that main wheel rotation automatically stops during landing gear retraction. We will now look at the nose gear. Note that the gear doors remain open when the gear is extended, and nose wheel rotation is stopped during retraction by a mechanical brake. The nose gear has a shock strut which consists of a main member, a sliding member, and turning tube. The main member is attached to a bracket on the rear bulkhead of the nose gear bay and is the point around which the gear pivots on retraction and extension. A spring-loaded downlock plunger fitted to the top of the main member locks the nose gear in the down position. When the nose gear is down, the nose gear doors remain open. Fitted to the turning tube is a hydraulic motor which can turn the nose wheel 76 degrees either side of center. This will be discussed more fully in the topic on nose wheel steering. The retraction actuator is attached to the main member on one side and the bulkhead bracket on the other side. When the landing gear lever is moved to the up position, hydraulic power removes the downlock and allows the retraction actuator to move the nose gear forward and upwards to the retracted position. The final movement of the retraction sequence brings the nose wheels into contact with the braking pads which stop the wheels. No uplock is fitted to the nose landing gear. As with the main gear, it is held in the retracted position by hydraulic pressure. When the gear has fully retracted, a sequence valve allows the nose gear doors to close. A door uplock mechanism then holds the doors closed. If hydraulic pressure is lost in flight, the nose gear will rest on the nose gear doors. The landing gear panel is located on the center panel, and the two-position gear selector controls gear position. The three landing gear position lights are located below the selector and are blank when the gear is fully retracted.
Moving the gear selector down will cause a blue light to illuminate, indicating that the landing gear is in transit.
The landing gear position lights illuminate when the corresponding landing gear is down and locked.
The blue transit light goes out when the gear reaches the selected position.
Please note that the maximum landing gear extended and operating speed is 200 knots. When the aircraft is on the ground, movement of the gear selector to the up position is prevented by a solenoid-operated latch controlled by the ground flight switches. Manual override of this safety latch is possible in case the latch fails to automatically retract after takeoff by pressing the selector lock override button. This allows movement of the selector to the up position. The alternate landing gear selector is located at the rear of the center pedestal on the right-hand side. Operation of the selector releases the locks of the landing gear doors and dumps the landing gear hydraulic system pressure. The landing gear will then extend by gravity and lock down. We will deal with this subject in more detail in the section on malfunctions. Next, we will consider the sequence of events to extend the landing gear. The landing gear is extended by moving the landing gear selector to the down position. Extend the landing gear.
On moving the selector to the down position, the blue light illuminates to show that the gear is in transit.
Each position light illuminates when the corresponding gear is down and locked.
The blue transit light extinguishes when the landing gear is in the selected position. Note that gear extension takes approximately 25 seconds.
We will now consider the sequence of events when the landing gear is retracted. Moving the selector up begins the retraction sequence. The main gear doors open and the nose gear begins to retract. When the main gear doors are fully open, the main gear retracts. When the respective gears are fully retracted, the doors close, controlled by a sequence valve.
When the gear is selected up, the position lights extinguish almost immediately after selection. When main and nose gears are fully retracted, the blue transit light extinguishes. Note that the retraction sequence takes approximately 6 seconds.
We will now consider the faults associated with the landing gear and the corrective procedures. With the aircraft on the ground, the landing gear selector is locked in the down position, thus preventing inadvertent selection of the up position. Normally, on takeoff, the lock is withdrawn, allowing the gear to be selected up. If this lock is not removed after takeoff, the actions to be taken will depend on the alert presented. In any case, the speed must be restricted to a maximum of 200 knots. The procedure is stated in the Quick Reference Handbook. First, we will consider the procedure when the selector is blocked in the down position. If, at an altitude greater than 400 feet above ground level, no ground flight control alert is displayed, then the fault is within the locking mechanism. In this case, the override button can be depressed to remove the lock, and the gear selector can be moved to the up position. However, should the ground flight control alert be displayed, then the landing gear should not be retracted. Those services which may be affected are listed. If the landing gear is in the up position and down cannot be selected, then the alternate landing gear procedure must be used. This will be covered later in this module. A landing gear fault after an up selection will give rise to a level 2 alert. This alert is activated if after up selection a gear is not up or a gear door is not closed within approximately 10 seconds. Again, speed must be limited to a maximum of 200 knots and the landing gear should be recycled. The gear must be allowed to reach its fully extended position before a reselection of up is made. Reducing airspeed before reselecting up may solve the problem. The alerts associated with the landing gear and doors not up with the landing selector in the up position are inhibited in the phases of flight shown. A level 3 alert is activated if the landing gear is not down and locked, with a radio altitude less than 1,000 feet and a flap position greater than 23 degrees. This alert can only be cancelled by lowering the landing gear in this case. The alert is also activated with a radio altitude of less than 1,000 feet, either thrust lever below minimum takeoff, and the gear not down and locked. The alerts associated with the landing gear not down are inhibited in the phases of flight shown. If the landing gear is unsafe after down has been selected, a level 2 alert is presented. This alert is presented if the gear fails to lock down within approximately 35 seconds of being selected down. Again, the landing gear should be cycled from the down to the up selection. The gear should be allowed to completely retract before a further down selection is made. Should a further attempt at lowering the landing gear fail, the alternate landing gear procedure should be followed. This procedure is described later in this module. If, after following these procedures, the landing gear is still unsafe, then the gear up unsafe landing procedure must be followed. The alerts associated with a landing gear unsafe after down selection are inhibited in the phases of flight shown. A left or right main landing gear door fault causes a level 2 alert. This alert is presented if the left or right main gear door does not close within approximately 35 seconds of selecting the gear down. The landing gear should be recycled, allowing the gear to complete the up cycle before reselecting down. Should this fail to solve the problem, the alternate landing gear procedure should be followed. The alerts associated with a main landing gear door fault are inhibited in the phases of flight shown. Now we will examine the alternate landing gear procedure. As we mentioned earlier, the alternate landing gear selector is located at the rear of the center pedestal. To operate the lever, it must first be unlocked by lifting the cover and sliding the selector release knob backwards. Then the alternate landing gear selector must be pulled fully up until it locks in the up position. Pulling the alternate landing gear selector fully up removes the up locks from the main and nose gear doors and operates the landing gear control valve to dump all hydraulic pressure in the landing gear system. This ensures that no hydraulic locks can prevent extension of the landing gear. With the removal of the lock on the gear doors, the gear will now free fall under gravity to the down and locked position. After lowering the gear by the alternate method, the gear doors remain open and on landing will make contact with the runway. However, rubbing strips on the edges of the doors keep damage to a minimum. As mentioned in normal operations, the down locks are spring-loaded to the locked position, thus ensuring that positive gear down and locked position is achieved. Since the alternate system dumps all landing gear hydraulic pressure, the nose wheel steering is inoperative. Therefore, after landing, the runway should be cleared using differential braking, but the aircraft should not be taxied further. As a further safeguard, the alternate landing gear selector has an interlock fitted which will prevent it being reset to its normal position unless the landing gear selector is in the down position.
Finally, note that the blue transit light will remain on after lowering the gear using the alternate system as long as the gear selector remains in the up position. A down lock switch disagreement after selecting the landing gear down will trigger to a level 1 alert. The procedure for this alert is to switch off the ground proximity warning system. Please note the speed brake auto retraction and rudder limiter may be affected. The alerts associated with the landing gear downlock switch are inhibited in the phases of flight shown. A door lock switch disagreement will give rise to a level 1 alert. Prior to takeoff, dispatch may be affected, and when airborne, no crew action is required. The alerts associated with the landing gear door lock switch are inhibited in the phases of flight shown.
In this module, we saw that the nose gear retracts forward and the main gear retracts inwards. We saw that during an extension or retraction sequence, the blue disagreement light on the landing gear illuminates. We also saw that the landing gear position lights illuminate when the respective gear is down and locked, and extinguish when the gear is fully retracted. We described faults associated with the landing gear as follows: landing gear blocked in the down position, landing gear blocked in the up position, landing gear fault after up selection, landing gear not down, landing gear unsafe after down selection, main gear door fault.
A down lock switch disagreement. Door lock switch disagreement.
Finally, we saw that operation of the alternate landing gear system involves lifting the cover, sliding the selector release knob backwards, and pulling the selector up.